So, how to turn the tables on how truth forms in us using intellectual trust. First, there's something we have to get out of the way. Emotional trust is biological and will always be extremely powerful, much more powerful than your intellectual trust. It's just how it works, it's biology, cannot do anything about it. So before the differentiation process becomes your instinct to search for the truth and to always evaluate information you get via intellectual and not emotional trust, you have to consciously remind yourself from time to time that truth and emotions belong to different categories, requires different approaches, and mixing them up is very counterproductive, not to say explosive, both internally with you and in relationships with others. Every fighting couple knows this. If during an argument one person talks about the facts and say, hey, you did this, I didn't like it, and the other talks about emotions like, hey, you made me feel like this, then they talk in different languages. They can never find common ground while the argument goes like this. They are just unconstructively hurting each other because every time you receive a reply in a different language, you are hurt because you feel like you are not seen, you are not heard. It's like they are not acknowledging your identity, your feelings, and your challenges. And every back and forth like this is really hurtful. So, should pause and someone should switch the language. Usually the smarter, more emotionally intelligent person in the fight will switch the language. He will be talking first about the facts, then about the feelings, or the other way around. But it's very important to just switch to the same language. And from this, I want you to remember that facts and emotions cannot coexist in the same conversation. That doesn't work. Categorically different things. The master truth searcher tunes down their emotions except one. It's very hard to explain in words if it's not something you have felt, but we can call it simply the love for truth. It's a flow, it's just this thing that becomes a part of you and you start respecting truth extremely highly. Where does it come from? Well, it's complex. This has no representation in nature. In the animal kingdom, everything is about usefulness in the animal kingdom. So this is a very human thing. It comes from highly human traits such as the search for meaning. I like to think about meaning in the following way. Meaning is when you believe that the world is one and things that you do influence other things even if they are not directly connected because you feel like the world is one. This is like an all-encompassing definition of meaning because I like to see everything mentally positive in the area of psychology and mental health as destroying barriers that literally are in your way of you and the things you want. And there are three kinds of barriers and three flaws that destroy them. They're the internal barriers, which says I am not one whole, and they're destroyed by self-love, which says you are one whole, I am one whole, I love myself as one whole, not separating myself into good and bad parts, I love myself as one whole. Then you have the unconditional love, the empathy, the compassion, seeing things and the world through other people's eyes, understanding them, acknowledging that they exist even though they might be different with their identities. And this requires the unconditional love flow, destroying the barriers that you have between you and others, the people you interact with, the people around. And the third flow, the flow of meaning, destroys every other barrier in the world, and then you feel the world as one, which means that your meaning may be to paint a beautiful painting and you will not directly interact with everyone who sees the painting, but you have meaning to create something beautiful that will make the life of another person that you will never meet, that you have never met, richer, a bit better. You give them inspiration, flows, nice feelings, and this is the idea of meaning. Meaning destroys all the other barriers. Very often these things come sequentially. If you don't have self-love, then you are incapable of unconditional love. You just don't have the basis, the vulnerability needed for this. Because for unconditional love, you need to be seen and vulnerable, and this comes from self-love because you need to be able to accept yourself. So very often first comes self-love, and then comes unconditional love, and then comes meaning. This is how you destroy your barriers in a path to just better flows. So, until you have meaning and all of these flows that you need in order to get to meaning with most people, until you have this, you will not be able to see the value of truth. Because what is truth? Truth is just an ideal for a better society. Because for a single person, the truth is not so useful. It's useful when they interact with society, but for society, truth is extremely important, because if there's no truth, society gets into the downward spirals of the bullshit, and basically it's game over for a good society. We get a much, much lower societal level. So basically the love for truth comes from meaning. You see the whole world as one. You wish the best things possible to every unknown person in the world. You wish the best structure for society, and you know that truth is needed for this, the ideal of truth. So you love truth when you have a very broad idea of meaning. So you not just have any meaning, it's not just the meaning that you sing beautiful songs or paint beautiful pictures. You need to have a very wide, constructive idea of meaning in the whole world as one, and then you can love truth. But it's not impossible. A lot of people have all of the loves and meaning and truth. It's not like, don't want it to sound like it's extremely hard. It's just the end of the road. It's not extremely hard in any way. For example, who has love for truth? Think of the journalists in war zones and authoritarian countries who risk their lives and sometimes even their families for journalists in authoritarian countries just to tell the truth. This is what it means to have a love for truth, because they know that the truth will set you free. It will give freedom and a lot of really key flows to society, at least to their countries. But the problem is, truth is an ideal, and intellectual trust is a method. It's not a driving force. Emotional trust is more like an attraction force. We are attracted to people that we trust emotionally, but intellectual trust is more of a method. It's completely different. And so truth is an ideal, it has no force. Intellectual trust is more than a method than a force. So we need an actual force to motivate us and push us in order to pursue objectivity. Because, of course, in a world governed by evolution, Darwinism, push and pull forces, nothing ever happens unless there's a force. Without a force, nothing moves, just like in physics. So love for truth is the force. This is the force that people have in their hearts who really want to be in the truth team and who want to bring others also in the small but powerful truth team. But beware, it's not a given that the love for truth, which may come from all of the other meanings and flows that you have, that it will combine with intellectual trust. Because the love for truth is a great thing to have. The love for truth is a force. It wants to get yourself to the truth, but the method has to be intellectual trust, and you may not have intellectual trust. You can definitely have love for truth and not have intellectual trust abilities. And then what happens? Love for truth can only work with emotional trust, the natural backup plan. And you can have love for truth. A person you love can have love for truth. They might definitely be extremely well-intentioned and want truth for all of humanity, but then they lack the skill of intellectual trust. They only have emotional trust. They start trusting sources they trust emotionally rather than intellectually. They don't have the right tools. Where do they end up? Bullshit coalition again, despite the noble intentions. So you see how many traps there are on the road to actual truth. And both the love for truth and intellectual trust require that you have more flows and less boxes in your life. So more flows means that you engage your right brain hemisphere more than most of us do due to modern lifestyle. There's a separate video in this, which will be linked in the description. Basically, love is a flow in itself, and it's obvious that you need to have flows which support each other for love. But why would a structure-based intellectual method like intellectual trust require flows? It's different things. The reason is coping mechanisms practiced by people who lack flows. In general, with the flows and boxes, people love flows, everything beautiful is a flow. Love, self-love, motivation, energy, meaning. But if you lack those stuff, you cope with boxes, mostly some kind of more harmless or more serious addictions. So people cope with their problems using various boxes. The most common box that's used for coping is the box of another person. You latch into this person, it becomes your total focus in life, and in this mechanism, we give huge emotional trust to someone else. They become our savior, the savior for all our problems psychologically. And in this situation, we explode with emotional trust that we feel to this person, and this basically just wipes out any idea that we have internally of intellectual trust. So intellectual trust is just gone, not to this person or to anyone else, but just totally. You just lose your ability to trust intellectually because you're so biased. And when you don't have intellectual trust, you lose the ability to follow the truth and the sources. If we have strong flows, we feel no need to be obsessive about another person. We have no need for this coping mechanism. And then we have the capacity to develop intellectual trust. It's not a given that we will, but we are able to. And I bet by now you are no longer surprised how Team Truth is tiny and Bullshit Coalition is huge. It's so hard to just go around all of this biological stuff that don't care about the truth or even push us in the opposite direction. Traps everywhere. The fight for the truth may feel like a lost battle. So many even pre-requirements to be able to start to fight. Need flows, love for truth, intellectual trust skills, education, experience in order to get any sources at all, and not to be heavily indoctrinated in a bullshit group already, otherwise you're very far away from the truth you cannot even reach. So how is this possible to make it? It's not a lost battle. In fact, it's the end of your single battle, because you don't have many battles in life. You have one. All progress is connected to its parts. And if you feel that it's this way, it's different, because you don't have many battles in life, you have one. Everything that you do in order to get closer to the truth is just part of your battle anyway. Having flows, great. Having love for truth, great. Having good education, great. Having diverse experience, great. Not being in a bullshit group already, great. So it's not like you're doing any huge extra effort here. If you just do the right things, you're already on the verge of forging your truth shield. You just want to do all of this stuff anyway. You already want to have flows, meaning, love for truth, and you want to have intellectual trust, because in order to fight for the truth in you, but also in others, you need the intellectual trust skills. So everything you need to forge the truth shield, you already need. There's no extra effort here, except for maybe the very specific intellectual trust skills. But all the flows, the love, this is already your central battle in life. To have flows, self-love, unconditional love, meaning. So it's like a cherry on top of the cake. If your self-improvement is the cake, your truth shield, your intellectual trust, your ability to discern the truth is just the cherry on top. Once you have the cake, just have the cherry and it's easy.